DFW cerita. What's DFW working on?
The FW sekarang tengah work on, I think, a few things relating to public space making, city making. I think apart from public space, we are, looking at developing our urban technology.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that a bit detached from the architecture punya community lah. And we're trying to basically connect that with spaces and also community and non-conventional people to, that's supposed to use it, macam public authority, even developers. So I think macam when we talk about technology adoption, probably in construction, people would think it's construction tech.
Well, that says a
Yeah.
lot. That says a lot. I think we're trying to expand our horizon. I
Yeah.
think it's the same with DFW lah.
Mm-mm.
And I think with that, I just wanted to say Assalamualaikum. Welcome, Taufik Nazaruddin, next guest in this episode of Cakar Ayam. Roll intro.
Boom.
Have you heard of this podcast? Of course you've heard of it. I've told you about it.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Sufyan, for inviting myself from Design Framework. So we make smart cities better.
You do.
For the community. That's our target. And I think coming into this podcast, when you contacted me, I saw the sort of the need to basically talk about design for, I think this podcast is meant for designers.
Not
Mainly?
necessarily, no.
No?
No, I think that's
Okay.
where I wanted to correct you.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is not only for designers, but it's meant to be for everyone, the general public. Generally, Cakar Ayam is a bit of background. Cakar Ayam is leading into the Kuala Lumpur Design Festival, which I think when this episode will air, it would probably be right in the middle or possibly the festival has finished. But the idea is to get people to get excited about design, to talk about design, and to bridge the gap between the public and designers. Because I think just in our previous episode, we talked to the common man, which we brought Amma Amdan in.
Hamdan, yeah.
And he represented, I think, the person on the street, what he thinks about design and designers, and why he feels that more can be done for the end product. I think generally there's an agreement that there are a lot of missed opportunities with a country like ours being so rich, having built so much. But when we compare ourselves dengan negara-negara lain, seantero atau di luar, there's this feeling yang kenapa kita tak sampai ke situ?
Yeah.
Why are we kenapa rasanya macam dekat Malaysia tak ada? Kalau if we travel ke dengan Asia ke, we always go to these places and we feel like cunnya kalau ada dekat Malaysia macam ni. Bestnya kalau ada these public spaces, these historical spaces, or even macam some events and festivals. I mean, bestnya kalau ada dekat ni. So I think this is where, leading into this episode, I hope we can talk about these spaces that already within our daily lives, and possibly creating new spaces, and specifically public spaces.
Yeah.
Spaces that are shared, spaces that are owned by everyone, spaces that are experienced by every single layer of society, tak kira bangsa, agama, or even status. T20, M40, B40 ke, tak ada. Everybody owns it. Everybody feel they have a stake in it. Everybody wants to enjoy it. And I think some of these spaces ada dekat KL. Some of these spaces mungkin tak ada. What can we do to, satu, identify these spaces, and dua, make them better spaces lah. So just to ask to get you warmed up, public spaces, democratic spaces, are they meant for everyone? Kalau kita were to put it bluntly lah, space ni macam memang hak semua orang ke?
Yeah, that's a very loaded and very heavy question, you know. Tapi I
Start deep end.
start the end lah. Start it hard, get the hard question out first kan.
Yeah.
So if we talk about democratic public spaces, memula kita break it down dulu kan, so
Yep.
people can understand apa konsep besar. So konsep besar dia nombor satu, democracy. So democratic ni pertaining to quality democracy, iaitu democracy ni is a system of governance. So kita kena accept benda tu. So maknanya democracy ni dia ada is actually a process that is guided by 3 guiding principle. Number 1 is equality, maknanya hak sama. And second, dari segi public sebagai proses, maknanya apa
Public
benda,
sebagai proses.
yes,
Okay.
public as a process. So democracy tu is a process yang mana it's done by the people. So
Right.
if this process tak ada, then quality democracy tu tak ada.
Okay, so done by the people. So
Yeah,
this
definitely.
is what gets me intrigued. Sebab macam I think even in the past few episodes of this series, we talk about process a lot. Process ni, especially design processes. Design processes are meant to be inclusive. Kita involve everyone. Tapi specifically, you're saying in public spaces, the public needs to be a part of this process.
Betul, ya. Sebab bila kita pertain to, kita letakkan demokrasi tu sebagai space making, maknanya kita nakkan kriteria demokrasi tu pada ruang tu, not just dari segi the object ataupun the end product, tapi dari segi space tu ada adanya governance.
Yep.
Sebab it's a system.
It's a system.
So a lot of civic spaces dia terjadi sebab ada satu governance, sebab this governance is a representative of the public.
Yep.
Yeah. And then second, because of the government representative of the public, dia kena menjaga pula kepentingan the public. So that's where dari segi participation tu, if the design of the spaces tu boleh dekat dengan representasi, to get as a majority ataupun consensus, that is the best process. So kalau kita attribute benda ni pada proses reka bentuk ruang ataupun public space, maknanya macam mana kita boleh demokratikkan proses menjadikan space tu. So ini dari segi public engagement lah.
Yeah. So sebenarnya kalau nak cerita pasal public space ni ataupun ruang, dia bukanlah kita bagi satu tempat kosong and it automatically becomes a public space. Dia tak jugalah. I mean, you agree that that's not the process. I mean, it's a lot more elaborate. It needs to be a lot more conscious, and sebenarnya it needs a good design input that involves the public to structure it.
Yeah.
To achieve this idea of placemaking lah.
Betul. Sebab kalau kita rasa space tu dia terjadi dengan sendiri, memang tak. Sebab
tak, because I'm asking you this sebab banyak design buat okay 10% green space yang paling awkward lah, and that becomes the public space when it shouldn't be like that kan.
Yeah. I think kita sometimes dalam design kita cakap this is like wasted space kan. Ni cakap kasar lah.
Yeah.
Tapi kalau dari segi land zone use, kita panggil dia open atau green spaces. Tapi because specifically topik ni pasal democratic spaces, we are also saying macam mana kita boleh pakai proses ni to make sure space tu activated.
Yep.
So salah satu cara untuk make sure space tu dia didokong oleh community ialah to make sure mereka ada access. So access ni dari segi ideation, dari segi cadangan, dari segi dalam membuat keputusan, dari segi dalam protes, you know, macam
tak semestinya negatif lah.
Tak, dari segi yang membina lah, critical, constructive criticism. And this is part of a healthy process like we mentioned tadi kan, untuk menjadikan space tu lagi vibrant, lagi banyak. So kalau space tu boleh plural, maksudnya ada pelbagaian kat situ, then dia akan lagi resilient lah. Masalah dengan some of the spaces yang kita tengok dekat bandar ni, is bila space tu dia terlalu top down.
Okay.
Maknanya, saya nak buat satu skatepark tapi saya tak bagi skateboarder
Pergi so.
input, design
Oh,
input.
design input. Alright.
Satu lagi macam kita tengok pula apa peranan translator. For example, architect. Okay, sebagai wakil untuk proses design. Sebab arkitek ni dia bukan hanya designer, dia adalah wakil community.
Okay.
Tu konsep penting. Memang this is important in civic society. Architecture is one of the pillar of civic society for the power of built spaces. So bila kita cakap macam ni, maknanya arkitek tu dia bukan ada tanggungjawab pada design dia sahaja. Dari segi ilmu, pengalaman dia dengan segala jenis privilege yang arkitek ni ada. Class society, etc. Tapi macam mana arkitek tu boleh merakyatkan design?
Merakyatkan design.
Adakah
That's the theme of the
is
talks.
this a question ataupun pemikiran yang berlega di kalangan komite arkitek kita?
Yeah, betul lah. That's the question lah. Whether or not the designers are taking up the challenge to look at it beyond their own specific projects. Sebab a lot of the times, macam even if we take a walk around KL ni, you see that macam there's not really much thought on the ground level engagement. Because terus I think the easy way out is issues of security. Ada pasang pagar. The moment that fence is up, it's a private entity. It's not shared. Online tak boleh access. And we talk about accessibility and being part and parcel owner of it. Even not to say from a title from a point of view, but just in terms of its use. And what more democratic space than the ground level where everything comes together, pedestrians, vehicles, commercial development. So these are components yang the moment we start segregating, kita put fences or we put some obstacles to prevent people from engaging and entering it, suddenly it's no longer public. It's taken out from this dialogue between people.
I like this point.
Okay.
Sebab actually this revert balik pada UN Charter Right to the City.
What's that?
So UN Charter Right to the City, I think somewhere in mid-2000s.
Okay.
It's a charter by United Nations to make sure that people have access to a city where we are facing a world where the population, 65% is becoming more globalized. Dekat Malaysia, we are at more than 50% urban community. Sorry, urban, bukan globalized.
Yep.
Urban community maksudnya banyak penduduk berhijrah ke bandar atau menetap di bandar, kawasan bandaran. Okay? And because of this, di bandar, kebanyakan kawasan, they say the shrinking public realm and the privatization of public realm. Okay? Maksudnya kebanyakan kawasan-kawasan yang kalau informal sekarang dia di bawah private spaces. So ini menyebabkan hak-hak dan kesesamaan tu dia berkurangan disebabkan that grey zone kan. For example, kebanyakan private spaces dekat Kuala Lumpur ni actually dalam mall. Okay?
Sebenarnya.
Park. So, kalau kebanyakan public space ni diletakkan bawah private, jadi dia menjadi satu masalah. Yeah. So, UN...
But ada je spaces that are private spaces but packaged as a public space.
Betul. Masalah dia ialah bila kita cakap pasal dia secara asasnya, adakah dia kawasan civic atau tak.
Okay.
Sebab
so that's the main ni lah.
Dasarnya for public spaces, it will not be for everyone. And the amount of activity yang boleh kita buat dekat kawasan tersebut, dia macam limited. So for example, macam mana public space tu, private space tu, boleh ensure yang community masa hadapan dari kelas ekonomi yang tak boleh akses private space tu, dia ada hak kepada bandar. Macam di China, dalam dia punya planning requirement, bila you submit, they also have this policy called end of days punya policy. Maknanya, kalau masyarakat dia runtuh, dia ada kawasan untuk bercucuk tanam dalam bandar.
Wow.
So, dia bukan saja kawasan landscape.
I see.
So, cara kita melihat policy pun penting dan cara kita ada kesedaran bezanya antara kawasan awam dan kawasan private spaces yang ada public program kena ada.
Okay. No, thank you for that. I think I don't really want to go
Sorry,
talking about end of
I
days.
don't know why we are very technical today.
But macam look, let's look at it slightly closer to where we are now lah. Can you help me macam maybe for apa the benefit of our viewers and listeners? What are some examples of good public spaces that macam through your experience that
Mm-mm.
either you've apa personally have gone to, or these are documented good spaces, or even recent projects which you think that we can learn from?
Maybe this question jawapan dia agak privilege lah. Sebab kalau kita bagi example yang luar negara kan, macam mana orang nak relate?
Susah lah
So
sikit.
maybe
Susah
kita
sikit.
akan bagi like a few example.
Just to
So
compare.
semua macam yang penting tu space tu is something yang bukan hanya dilihat dari segi image dia, tapi dari segi experience dia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Itu yang paling penting lah.
So ada a few spaces that comes to my mind lah, because bila I think about good public spaces ni, kalau locally kita start dulu, I think recently there are quite good spaces yang created. Okay, saya rasa yang paling besar sekali ialah Dataran Merdeka lah.
Okay.
Okay, ini for me, I know it's going to orang cakap, ya ke ni kan? Tapi hakikat dia ya. Sebab every time kita pergi sana lepas pukul 10, dia tak dipagar, orang boleh duduk, and then ada banyak, banyaknya program dekat dataran tu untuk rakyat, and the type of orang yang melawat kawasan tu pun pelbagai. Tapi maybe dari segi design dia agak kurang sebab dia ada macam kekangan, it's a heritage space. Okay, second dari segi Putrajaya. Okay, ni pun saya rasa macam betul ke ni Taufik kan? Bagus ke space ni? Ya, dia bagus sebab kalau kita melawat dari pukul 8 sampai pukul 12, dataran tu penuh dengan orang jogging. And
Putrajaya.
ya, Putrajaya. And I think sebab orang tak melawat kawasan ni kan, sebab kita live in a segregated society.
That's right.
Tapi bila tengok dari pukul 8 sampai 12 ni, dia ada makcik, ada akak kan, ada pakcik, ada babang, ada all these university kids and children, and single and women jogging. So maksudnya kawasan ni memang selamat, accessible, dan the entire stretch daripada Masjid Putrajaya all the way down towards Putrajaya Convention Center tu, dia memang aktif. So I think pada awalnya mungkin dia tak activated, tapi sekarang dia jadi sukses.
Yeah. No, I think in the last decade or so, memang that was Putrajaya. Satu, it was developing. There wasn't a matured community yang ada dekat situ. But now, macam even if you look at the data, or even just paling senang lah, we look at macam cerita tadi, the public spaces at the malls. Some of the biggest malls are on that side of KL or Bangi, or even Putrajaya. Besar, meaning that there are a lot of people going there. Itu indoor space. Outdoor space, like you were saying, a lot of events, activities that happen outside of your typical office hours are happening there. So macam, and Putrajaya was a heavily designed city. It was considered a tabula rasa project, where it was done on a completely new macam greenfield area. Tak ada apa, it was just swampland, and then it was converted to become a new central administration center for Malaysia. So because of that, there was the opportunity to design it. Bagus ke tak, architecturally ke, design wise ke, there's a lot of arguments and debates. But what can't be argued is how it's being used now lah. And if from the numbers, it seems like it's
activated.
It's activated. It's activated.
And the thing macam indicator of good spaces ni juga kita kena pecahkan macam who is taking the lesson from it.
Okay.
So for example, Project River of Life, dia banyak
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
inspirasi dekat other municipal council untuk projek pembaruan urban regeneration of sungai-sungai.
Yeah.
So projek macam Putrajaya ni maybe dia boleh help us build a nation of healthy living people. Why not, Tapi macam maybe dari segi kekangan dia, macam dia punya policy pentadbiran, kenapa pukul 12 tutup? Macam kenapa Taman Tasik Titiwangsa dipagar? Because KL punya working class yang actually the servicing industry that actually live in the city, they finish work after 10.
Betul?
So they will bring their children 10 to 12 to the park. Tapi park tu ditutup pukul 10 dan dipagar. So sometimes this yang kita tengok balik. Adakah kita melihat dari segi design dia, dari segi physical? Adakah kita melihat design dari segi fizikal sahaja? Maksudnya world class sidewalk, world class benches, you know. Putrajaya dia bandar as a global city. Tapi adakah kita melihat dari segi dia punya image macam Melaka ataupun maybe Penang, you know, where it's more heritage. Tapi do we make it smaller? Macam mana kita nak activate community dalam kawasan-kawasan yang berbeza? So bila space tu dikecilkan dan pengajaran dia kepada siapa, kalau kita nak inspire local council, ada keperluan. Kalau kita nak inspire community to participate, design dia macam tu. Kalau kita nak inspire young architect, then conversation dia lain.
Yeah. So I mean, these are the things that macam need to happen lah in the establishment or looking at macam what makes it a good space. So and then some of I think how you've kind of explained it as well is what stops it from making a successful place. So there are examples where macam especially in KL ni lah. KL ni is
Mana yang
national
vibrant.
center lah where there's a lot of historical significance. And like you mentioned Taman Tasik Titi Wangsa, it's supposed to be a public park. Tapi it's closed after the hours that where a majority of the people that have access to it cannot access it. These are things that possibly macam the definition of a public space tu is not public until you can allow for a wider range of the public to access it. Is this right?
Betul.
Yeah.
Sebab bottom line, the city that is built and the spaces represent the society system
Okay.
that, you know, basically that inhabits.
Yeah.
So maybe your question is asking soalan macam, apakah budaya Kuala Lumpur? Apakah identiti Kuala Lumpur?
Yeah.
And actually dalam konsep bandar, dia bertanyakan lagi dua soalan besar. Iaitu, apakah format pentadbiran Kuala Lumpur ataupun leadership dia?
Yeah.
Dan kedua, actually dalam konsep demokrasi juga, apakah participation rakyat?
Okay, so I just want to make sajalah aku nak bagi political sikit this question. Macam can we make this representation of concept Madani ni into something that is urban?
That's tough.
And architectural, right? That sajalah. I mean, you won't shy away from a tough question.
No, I won't shy away. Okay, design is politics.
Design is politics. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Politics ni is important because it is the symbol of power. And walaupun kita, macam Malaysia ni, kataan politik tu dah jadi satu yang
jijik.
Jijik ataupun what's the English word for it? It's something yang tebu.
Tebu, okay. Yep.
Tapi if kita nak jadi masyarakat yang mature, kita kena control our tools. Okay. And power is one of our tool of activism and participation.
Last episode, we talked about form follows function. Now we talk about form follows power.
Yes, power follows participation.
Power follows participation.
Democracy kan?
Yeah.
So we still on topic. So oleh sebab tu, that's why design ni penting. Sebab design ni is embedded in our Nusantara identity.
Okay.
You know? In everything we do.
Yeah.
Kita buat benda sebab kita resolving a lot of issues. And it's multiple plane. That's dynamic about the Malay culture. When we do something, we're not just solving and representing it in the physical aspect. For example, buat rumah kan.
Yeah.
Tapi dia ada ritualistic dia yang dia meletakkan action dalam design tu as an art form.
Okay.
So it's high culture.
Yeah.
So bila
kita high culture ni apa? What's high culture? Explain it to me.
Ni topik lain kan?
Ni topik lain, but very quickly.
High culture ni maybe later Afandi Saleh boleh explain dengan lagi detail. Tapi budaya tinggi ni maknanya benda seperti kesenian, kesinambungan, benda-benda yang bukan zahir tapi tersirat. So dia macam classical music ataupun traditional art form. Dan benda ni kita boleh lihat dalam masyarakat atau negara. For example, kita tengok Indonesia.
Okay.
So dia terlihat identiti dia without having to be visual.
Yes.
So high culture ni membolehkan seorang ada sense of identity.
Yeah. That's very important lah, because I think this idea of budaya is something yang just traditional. When padahal budaya ni can be budaya contemporary, can be budaya society. So
Betul.
macam mana kita nak create the discussion to symbolize this. I think you say it best when macam without showing it, you can identify the identity of that country without even macam forcing it. So have we gone there? Have we reached there? Macam obviously it's rhetoric lah, memang tak lah.
So kau tanya aku kan?
tapi we need to be doing this, and it's through macam detaching ourselves and acknowledging lah, macam tak semestinya budaya tu just from I say this a lot lah, song and dance of Malaysia truly Asia tu. I think we have to go beyond that. We have to create, say, this cultural production ni, so it shows our identity without needing to be too superficial about it. If you want to add on that?
I think this is the kadang-kadang identity crisis yang kita ada sebagai as a society, sebagai city maker, sebagai designers, and also sebagai the citizen of the city ataupun Malaysia kan. Kita bertanyakan soalan, adakah kita ni maju ataupun adakah kita true to our identity?
Yeah, and we make people feel guilty about it kalau tiba-tiba it doesn't fit the definition.
Sebab menjadi satu masyarakat yang maju atau mature society requires the space. And this is where the public space is dia satu kawasan lapangan of a represent extension of the thought space, the identity space. And dia ada keperluan untuk trial and error, and to rectify, itinerate kan. And then to recreate kan. And dia perlu dilihat, dia perlu dinyanyikan, dia perlu ditarikan, dia perlu diomokkan, dia perlu dibina, dia perlu macam-macam lagi. So apa benda yang ada dalam budaya tu, dia perlu wujud untuk dijadikan satu conversation dalam many layers, so that kita betul-betul faham kejituan prinsip-prinsip budaya kita. And that's where I think looking at identity in space making is especially very important in our city dan country.
I see.
Sebab kita tidak ada banyak public spaces yang baru untuk melambangkan what we have achieved in that 50-60 years as an independent nation. Sebagai satu konsep bangsa negara. Dan tambah lagi, sorry.
Boleh, sila.
Saya mencelah ya.
Sila.
Juga kita tidak ada banyak peninggalan yang boleh menunjukkan apakah spaces atau bandar-bandar ataupun town-town yang tradisionalnya yang melambangkan prinsip dan budaya kita yang sebenarnya masih hidup di jiwa kita tapi kita tak dapat lihat.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's deep. Deep. Because you talk about these things, and sebenarnya with the quantum of what we've built, especially in the last few decades, these are ingredients or spaces, to be specific, that macam in the form of opportunity to create better communities that we've possibly missed out on. That has been crucial lah to the betterment of a wider society. So I think macam I mean, to be fair, we're a young country.
Yeah.
60 plus years of independence.
Yeah.
And I think there has been rapid development to get us on par with developed countries. Unfortunately, we missed a few things, and possibly public spaces are those things. But there's always room for us to kind of correct these things. And it's about looking at the opportunities that we do have and the situation that we are at and the capacity that we have to apa kita ubah lah. Kita ubah the way how we look at things, the way how we approach things, so we can do them better. So you were on a talk recently with BFM on the radio,
Yeah.
talking about the city in 100 years.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, and macam possibly just these public spaces. How did that fit in that conversation?
Okay. Wow, you really linked the questions up. Like a mental space. Before we get to the BFM, if can I just address a little bit about, I think it's important when we talk about the missing out, that's very crucial because in a lot of the development work that Malaysia loves to talk about is what we've missed out. We are a nation that is constantly missing out. Tapi yet, bila kita ada people not from our country visiting our city, it's amazing, it's pleasant, it's magical, it's all the positive things. And part of my work requires me to travel. And I hear people talk about Kuala Lumpur in a way that it should make me proud.
Okay.
So I think that speaks volume. It's like Paulo Coelho, Invisible City, but it's as if we don't write this story about our city. Like we don't know our city or we refuse it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether this is post-colonial,
Okay.
in that sense.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put it there. But at the same time, I think, okay, moving forward, I think what's important is that we know what we want and we know who we are. And this is something that's important to be inculcated in education, in sort of understanding national history, architectural, road history, development history is important, understanding about the role and pivotal people, our national thinkers, who they are, what constitutes Malaysian philosophy. There should be a lot of books, that floods our bookstores, and people should love to read about it. And also reading, like national local fiction. Sebab we should be a people who is in love with our stories.
Yeah.
Essentially.
But traditionally macam we are a people, a community that have transferred knowledge through generations through stories. It should be natural to us. Unfortunately, it seems like
Exactly. Because the funny thing is, if we look at maritime societies, macam pirate again, a lot of it is through songs, orang kapal kan, songs and stories. We are still a nation that love to talk. But do we know our stories or the origin of our stories?
Okay.
Yeah. So that is something that is very important and it's a clue. Because if we were to move forward, we have to start at our origin, no matter how far we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does
100 years.
that kind of lead you into like what's the next 100 years? What will
definitely.
it be like?
When Midjourney came out, I thought of it a little bit,
AI ni lah.
Yeah,
Cakar
AI.
pasal AI lah.
And there was a short like fiction, city competition. I wrote something, but I didn't submit it. But for me, like understanding the systems and how we are moving forward as a society, just thinking about 100 years, can we imagine if we are people who are reacquainted with our stories, with our heroes, with our philosophies, with our songs and dance and clothes. But, we are buffeted by, latest technology, syntactic material, with timber skyscrapers, with public space as sawah padi, like how the Netherlands have, after hundreds of years of countering flooding, now to flood their country. So we should be seeing a lot of floodplains, and we should seeing a lot of like steel buildings technology, but still don't lose our sort of modernity, but very rooted in that image of being who we are as a diverse Southeast Asian or Selat Melaka and Laut Cina Selatan society.
Yeah.
You know, can we be like people who embrace our boating technology like the Scandinavians? You know, we should be proud of that.
Yeah.
Netting, synthetic material, and can we basically have a lot of representation in design to fauna and flora like our bakau, our rafflesia, amazing flowers, the leaves that is already prevalent in our near history like the ukiran kayu and etc. Why do we, the Malaysians that live from 1957 to 2023, don't take it into ourselves to basically develop the stories that, you know, that made it so far?
Yeah, I think it's only in our approach that we've kind of failed. There is the need to kind of gather some points in our history to take forward, but unfortunately, it's been just replanted. Macam you take, and katakan if we were to use that ukiran lah, or even some
Boat making.
boat making, they would take exactly what's in the history books and replicate it. So it's more mere replication of an artifact rather than looking at the spirit or the technology that was used or the thinking even behind it to progress the outcome in a way that is contemporary.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is missing.
Yeah.
So you pose the question, macam what can we take in terms of cues from our past, but also asking the question, how can we strengthen the issues that we are facing with these lessons that we've kind of inherited? So I think that's quite important because I wanted to touch on to a project that you're working with Think City, which actually asks a lot of these questions. I mean, you are looking at the Masjid Jame area, which is historically is very rich and very important to the story of Kuala Lumpur. Basically, the start where the two rivers Sungai Klang, Sungai Gombak converge, and that is historically where Kuala Lumpur started. But if you were to ask anyone, tak kisahlah Malaysia ke dekat luar ke, where's the center of KL? Most probably no one would really know. They would say KLCC. That's where the Petronas towers are. And then again, there's that lost opportunity of using that and the stories that come with it and the historical significance to create a place that is held dearly by all Malaysians. But you have an opportunity to kind of do something different. I think, can you share a bit about that task and that what you're working with Think City with and what you're aiming to do?
Sure. So the Masjid Jame Enclave Action Plan is part of a enclave that is under the Kuala Lumpur Creative City District project. And I think what's important about this project is that it asks the question of when we locate our heritage and history as a enclave, what do we do with it and who is it for? So you rightfully said, one is for Malaysian and for ourselves to reflect on, you know, like our origin, because history is very empowering, and it is also a source that basically can be a catalyst to commerce, to trading, to the creative economy, and to designers. But also the important question is, how does a heritage place in the city become an identity or a brand for the city? So when we talk about major cities like Bangkok, Istanbul, London, even Shanghai, immediately we conjure up the main spaces of the city. And these are not just generic places where we say square.
Yeah,
You know,
bukan.
these are places, you know, South Bank, Regent Square, Trafalgar Square, the Bund in Shanghai, you know, in Siam, you know, along the river. And so, you know, it's about creating that clear district identity that is represented by tangible, intangible asset, and also in the contemporary sense, the community that basically ensure that they have a current sort of activity that defines those spaces, you know. So another example is, for example, Liberty and Carnaby Street, you know. I think a lot of people know this. I'm sorry, it's a shopping street, but the whole point is the young brands, you know, in London, they are located on that street, but the street doesn't lose its character in terms of all this heritage of these buildings in London. And I think this is where we ask the question of, how do we create place of a brand that's global, but still rooted within image of the city. But I think the one other aspect of this project, which is interesting, is that it should also be built for the current community on site and also for the future community that is intended for it to be in.
That's right.
So understanding that Kuala Lumpur has so many central business districts, like TRX, BBC, Bukit Bintang Commercial Center, BBCC in Pudu, and then it has Bandar Malaysia coming up soon. So many of the past development has always been talking about a generic financial district of the
Yeah.
city. And that is not going to give it any distinctiveness when it comes to saying, how is KLCC any different from Shanghai commercial district or even London financial district? Because these are all glass and steel buildings.
That's right.
So in the future, we are going to have this opportunity to rely on something that has been in the making, that's truly KL in that sense.
Yeah.
In the muddy essence of the river,
The muddy essence of the
with the
river.
history of the, people trying to build something on that crazy bank, with the fire of Kuala Lumpur. And, like there was a kampong there, and then later there's a streets, shop houses, and etc. So how can this be the future story of Kuala Lumpur? How can commerce and adaptive reuse, turn that district into something that right now is very blightful, into something that is delightful, and something where there's something for the tourists, but there's also something for the artisanal, the traders, and also the young creatives, to come into the city. And we also need to look at the roles of large corporation and also institute and how they should play more role
Yeah.
in sort of being a platform to promote participation and also city making.
Yeah. Again, this isn't like a one person's job. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard. Of course, it's easy, very easy for us to say, ni kerja di BKL, biarlah di BKLPK. Macam mana nak buat? Kita dah bayar cukai.
Susah sebenarnya.
But I'm guessing this is where, I mean, Kuala Lumpur was built on the shoulders of a history of businessmen's
The shoulders,
yeah, shoulders, yeah, and
Nasi
also
kandar yang tu lah.
nasi kandar, tak ada membanting tulang, cari biji timah. It was very economically driven. But those were the economies of the past. Now we need to be looking at the economies of the future, digital transformation, smart businesses, and looking at how we can connect Kuala Lumpur to the global society. And there's the opportunity there to do that, because tak tahulah, call it fate ke apa semua, but that was the start of KL. KL flourished from that point. And to totally disregard it in that sense sebenarnya is our loss. Like, why would we do that? Macam, wouldn't we just want to continue, but kita kena repurpose it lah with what's current.
I mean, this goes back to that notion, like, who built Kuala Lumpur? And I think subconsciously, because of, how we perceive, again, our origin, I think we need to study it and accept it, And after we accept it, we need to draw strength and inspiration from it.
Yeah.
Instead of running away from it. And this is where I think if we are affirm on our origins, and we affirm that Kuala Lumpur is not just built by the successes, but also the tribulations, the crises, and the failures that makes it very resilient.
Yeah.
The plurality of those who are from Kuala Lumpur and those who came to Kuala Lumpur and those who are temporarily in KL, us being a maritime civilization again, to basically be inclusive, tell all the stories, get all the representatives in, with the CBD, with the smart city, but also with the youth, with the migrant communities. And how can this basically represent a better branding of Kuala Lumpur? Already as it is, when we talk about food, which is a great image indicator for KL, our food heritage is tremendous,
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Many types of cuisine, dishes, from mama, nasi lemak.
Nasi
There you
lemak
go,
lah.
nasi lemak,
Yeah,
come
nasi
in.
lemak.
Roti canai,
Number one in the world.
the baba sambal, And the Indian banana leaf.
Yeah.
So we're plural society, and I think that we cannot keep ahead moving forward just looking at economic success indicators, but we must include other indicators that are again more befitting of a mature society and a high culture society, meaning stories, arts must be included in there.
Yeah. No, it's it's good that macam you've managed to articulate what a good public space means, and apa towards the apa throughout the conversation define what a good city needs to be. And of course, any good city is always a work in progress. There's never a point in time when you can say the city is done. It's the best.
Mm.
I mean, those are to me the failed cities. Because after that point in time, much of what happens, people change, businesses change, society changes. But how does a city that's resilient, adapt to these changes? And I think in time, Kuala Lumpur has been resilient itself, but we need to continue to have these conversations, and we also need to learn from the many lessons that things that we have done right, but also things that we haven't managed to do or apa the best. So I think macam looking at macam going back to Masjid Jamek, I think anyone would have passed through the area, but there isn't quite a significant memory of it despite being congested. Kalau boleh nak elakkan, tak nak masuk because of the jams. Pedestrian wise, after 6 o'clock, people choose not to be there. It's considered quite dodgy, menakutkan malam. But I think macam there is an opportunity because of the whole area being the middle of Kuala Lumpur, the definition of Kuala Lumpur, but also taking the history of its resilience and transforming it into something better. Because you see, there's a lot of boutique hotels starting up. There, people want to be a part of it, but as much as they are already there now, there's a question to: is this it? Is this what Kuala Lumpur is about? A series of upgraded shop lots, or can it be more? Can it be, boleh tak kita introduce program-program yang menggalakkan ekonomi berskala kecil, sederhana dan besar, for it to invite different types of people? But also that other conversation is, can we make cities livable? Can we get people to move back into Kuala Lumpur? I mean, I think there's a lot of literature and evidence going about how cities have died, people moving from city center to the suburbs. But there also have been success stories about cities being revitalized again by getting people to move in. So there's talks about the 10-minute city, but also the 1-minute city where you can get to any service or amenities that you may require within a walking distance. So these are things that we need to look into, how we further restructure our cities, but looking into how people live and the types of homes that we have now. Are they suited for this current need? Macam the people that want to live and work in KL, will it be the same? Is it micro housing? Is micro housing even the answer? Or is it sort of looking at a way of shared spaces to facilitate the restriction of these spaces? So I think in the next episode we'll kind of get onto that. This issue of looking at homes, future homes, and what is stopping us from creating better homes, affordable homes. Because at the moment, what we're seeing is the same outcome again and again. Kapak, 8 tingkat, and then towers. Completely the same design. 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet. Sama.
Yeah.
I mean, things are changing. Requirements are changing. Lifestyles are changing. Macam, how can we look at homes to be better? And for homes to be better, they need to have access to these public spaces that we're talking about. So there is this need to look at how these new homes that we're looking at have access to these public spaces, for them to be the future homes and for it to revitalize, I think, KL lah.
Mm.
But it also can be solutions for other cities that we have in and around Malaysia. Right now, we're specifically talking about KL because it's the series of Cakar Ayam is looking into Kuala Lumpur Design Festival. And some of the conversations are directly linked to the conversations that KL is talking about. But places like Johor Bahru,
Mm.
Ipoh, even
Yeah.
Kuantan, similar issues. And we can be asking the same questions to think about better outcomes. And I think this is where I wanted to invite people to really share what you think. I mean, are we missing something? Are we not identifying the right things? Or macam are we completely missing the whole point of this discussion? Do people think it's something else is important? I don't know. I think I'll leave it to you for some last words.
Yeah, I think this is where I'm imagining this is where you people are watching this on YouTube and then they go like, what are these two dudes talking
benda
about? You know,
ni.
benda diorang cakap ni. And maybe this is where they can, write down in the comment section, what their thoughts are, about building better cities or even about what we talked about. I mean, I myself is gonna check out the comments. I think that the main point is that city is a complex system. And so there are so many different, angles that we need to talk about the city, You rightfully mentioned like so many categories of, topics. And I think it's important in this topic for anyone looking at it, at least, not just to be obsessed about the knowledge aspect of it, of being a technologist in that sense, to want to break it down. But it's also important to basically find an angle of, to take a position on matters, take it in. Whatever you learn, can you basically construct or create a platform, even if it's your own, to basically develop from there something that you can contribute to make the city better. I think that's most important. And I think even as a conversation, like what this blog or podcast is all about,
Yeah.
I think that will be, can guide a lot of the conversations and the work, actually, because we do refer to all these thought processes.
Yeah.
Jen Lucken.
Yep. Thank you very much, Taufik. It's good to have you on the show. And for everyone, please comment, like, and subscribe, as my girls would like to say.
Well,
So, looking forward to more conversations outside of the podcast, but maybe again, returning segment.
yeah, why not? Yeah,
Thanks, Tauf.
look forward to it. Look forward to everyone's opinion, and thank you so much.
See everyone next week.
See everyone next week. Aku pula kan.